welcome to this week's edition of Your Business Unleashed podcast. Today, we've got a super special guest, someone who I've known for quite a while and who we've done quite a bit of work together, Mike Morrison. Mike, thanks for joining us, Mike.
Thank you so much, Clayton.
Yeah, Mike's done a lot in the marketing space. He is the owner and operator of Social West, Social East, Social Pacific, Social at Home. I don't think that's a thing anymore.
Now it's SocialNext.
SocialNext.
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but all of them together make up the largest digital marketing conferences in Canada, right?
Yeah. Social West in Calgary is the largest in Canada. And then the others are growing. Halifax Social East is the next biggest, I think.
Cool.
Yeah. Cool. I mean, there's no way to really track that, but I can't find anything bigger. So I just say it.
Well, you know what? If you say it enough, then somebody's going to pop up to either refute it or not. So
exactly. And I've been saying it for a few years and no one said anything. So
perfect. And then you've also got a podcast called I Quit.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Which is one of those podcasts that I go back to every now and then, but it's I interview entrepreneurs about the day that they quit their job, like what led up to that decision and how they decided to do it. And so not necessarily about their entrepreneurial journey, but like what led up to that journey. Because I think for so many entrepreneurs, they can be stuck in that pre-quitting period where their wheels are just spinning and they think, oh, everyone else's situation's different. Mine is unique. And so I try to find people with different situations so people can be applicable. So like I've had like a sister who quit her sister's company to open another agency, like things like that. And they're still friends. And I'm like, so I wanted to show that that the breadth of people that quit and why they quit.
I love that. I love that because this podcast is we kind of pick it up from there. I mean, we do talk about the entrance to entrepreneurship story, but I think what I'm trying to do with this podcast is say, hey, listen, we all have a really hard go of this entrepreneurship game, right? And I've seen a ton of your content over the years, and I think that's part of what's really attracted me towards you is there's not a lot of smoke and mirrors with you, right? It's just Here it is. It's hard. We're grinding it out. We're doing it together. This is a great community of entrepreneurs, and let's try and make a run of this, right? So
yeah, I think like as a short, bald, gay guy, like I don't fit the mold that sort of LinkedIn presents as a successful entrepreneur anyway. So I've never felt that need to disguise myself as that. And so as someone who looks at my numbers every day, like you do, like I have good years and I have bad years, and the goal is to find that middle ground.
Yeah. Where did you used to be a producer somewhere? Like what happened? What brought you to quit? I'm sure.
Oh yeah, I mean, I have a degree in Spanish from a Catholic university in New Brunswick. I have a teaching degree which I never used, and then I moved to Alberta and I was a greeter at a bank. I worked banquets for 8 years at the Sheraton. Then I started a blog, and then at the same time I was a faculty advisor at the University of Calgary for like fine arts students, and then that led to me. I was always the guest on. For a few years I was a guest on breakfast television, sort of as like a city commentator, and then they eventually asked me to work there as a TV producer, which is something I had no experience in. And
so I was doing. They brought you on as a producer, and you've never done any producing.
No.
How does that happen? Like you'd think they're pulling people out of school for that, right?
No, I know. And the interns were definitely very mad because they knew way more. I'd be like, I need to put that thing on the bottom of the screen. And they're like, well, how are you getting paid? And we're but it was, I always worked with them, and I was sort of like, breakfast television had to convince me actually, because they asked me and I was like, but I don't know how to do that. And they said, well, with the blog, and at the time the blog was pretty successful, they're like, you're basically doing that. You're taking a piece of information and applying it to your specific audience. That's all you're doing with us. It's a TV audience. And because of the website, I was so connected in the city, and I still am super hyper aware of what's going on, who's doing what, So that segment producing job wasn't a very technical job. There was always the people who were around that could do that. Mine was more, writing the scripts, meeting the guests, coming up with developing storylines. So I did that for almost 4 years, and I just sort of felt like there wasn't really much growth to it at Breakfast Television here because like the rest of the network has shows in Toronto and stuff. And so I sort of felt trapped, and the blog was still doing well. And so I sort of told myself, I kept waiting to make enough money to leave, but I was never going to be able to make enough money as long as I was working 40 hours at Breakfast Television. So
Yeah.
I had to take that leap of like,
That's terrifying.
it's very terrifying. Luckily, one of my first people that hired me was Breakfast Television. So I left,
good.
I left on Friday and I was back on Monday as like a freelance producer. So that helped. And I also I gave 3 months notice because I was so scared. I mean, even now it's hard to quit and to be a blogger full time. Like that's such a hard job. And so you imagine 10 years ago. So I used that time to sort of build as many relationships as possible and establish different ways that people could work with me and things like that.
So the blog, were you monetized? Like, were you collecting? How do you make money? My blog doesn't make money. I mean, indirectly, I suppose. Put a bunch of information out there, and hopefully somebody reads it. But how were you making some money from it before you quit? How does that work?
I mean, there was money on it. Definitely through some ads. I sort of had this angle of like sort of positive Canadian entertainment news. And so there weren't very many sites that focused on that. And so
it was the dirt. Everybody wants the dirt.
Yeah. And so the brands, the channel, the brands and the networks and stuff like that, sort of, I became fast friends with them pretty quickly because they're like, oh, here's a guy. And like, while I didn't study TV, like I love TV. I understand it in and out. I know how it works. I know why it works, stuff like that. And like, so having like when I was interviewing people, when I was whether it was audio or writing, like I'm a good interviewer. And I'm interested in who I'm talking to, and so it helped me build a really nice reputation. And then so definitely there wasn't too many like Google monetization sites just yet. So a little bit of money through that, but a lot of like partnerships. So like sponsored posts, sponsored campaigns. I got flown to Amex flew me to Spain to see Coldplay play in a bull ring.
Yeah. Oh, come on.
Like in lots of wild opportunities that so it was sort of the Wild West for content creation. There wasn't a ton of rules, but there was some money if you knew how to ask for it. And it was mostly that. But then I started supplementing because I'm always aware that my profession ebbs and flows. Just because you're popular now does not mean you'll be popular next year. You always have to sort of be innovating. And so that's how I started teaching workshops on social media to small businesses, which in turn turned into these conferences.
Okay. So you're teaching people how to be an influencer, because people would call you, I guess, an influencer, right? You're an influencer.
By that definition, by society's definition, or content. We try to say content creators now. It wasn't that like I to this day couldn't tell you how many Instagram followers I have. It's not something that drives me. I've been and I think that's because I came in on the ground floor. So my success didn't come from numbers. It came from the content I was creating. So I think that trained my brain differently than if a content creator was going to start today. It would be so much harder. But no, mine was more teaching small businesses how to use social media and how to know when they were getting hosed by social media managers and things like that. Like I think I had a hard time seeing like a 1 or 2 person shop hiring a social media manager to run their Instagram accounts. And I was like, no, you don't need to you don't have that money. You don't need to spend that money. I'm just going to show you how to do it. And then it sort of has just grown. And so now Social West gets about 850 people at it every year. And it still has that education feel to it, which I think causes the success of it. So the speakers that do terribly at Social West are the ones who get up there and just talk about themselves and aren't interested in teaching the people in the audience. And
Isn't
so
that the truth?
I try to mitigate. And most conferences are like that, right? Most conferences they pay to speak, or they're there because their company sent them to try to get new customers. And my philosophy when I work with the speakers is like, you'll get those customers if you just give a good presentation, because 25-30% in that room is going to say, that's really cool that you know how to do that. Please just do that for me, as opposed to me learning how to do that. So I had talked to someone we just did one a few months ago, and they said that what they really liked about it was that no one on the stage acted like they were better than anybody in the audience. It was almost as if I chose 30 people at random, and they got to go up and speak. And so there was no ego about it. There was no, and if someone dropped out, I could probably find someone in the audience to give a presentation. And that's sort of been the sort of secret sauce to our success.
Yeah, I think, you've hit on a couple of really key points here, just, key takeaways maybe for entrepreneurs that I really believe in. And one of those is, we're not here to sell anything, right? I mean, sales isn't a dirty word, and we need to sell it. We need to generate revenues. But I think that the real business comes from, if there's tier one thinking where it's, okay, what do I think about myself? Sort of self-awareness. Tier two thing is, what does Mike think about me? And by the way, what do you think about how you said you're good at interviewing? So am I doing all right?
You're doing great.
Thank you. So what do you think about me?
You're asking questions about the things I actually said. That's like interviewing 101. So
good.
People don't even do that. So you're doing great.
Yeah. Well, I'm not here for, as I say, I'm not here for me, and you can't be, right? It's like, we're all on this crazy journey together. And so then you get into tier three thinking, which is where the real good stuff happens. We're talking about this in our 3 to 5 club this month, where you go, what is the other person thinking and feeling about themselves? And how can I help that journey, even when it's maybe to my own detriment? And I've seen you do this so much in the years that I've known you, where it's like, you know what, I'm going to just do something, and maybe I won't get any benefit out of it. Worse, maybe there will be detriment to me. I can think of we'll talk about COVID later, but maybe there will be detriment to me, but it's good for other people. Right. And that's, and so I think that that's where the real great entrepreneurs live, is in that tier three thinking. Right.
Yeah, I actually use, I say, like, my accountants probably don't like me, but I'm actually talking to my accountant now, right? But like, I do tend to put on events, come up with ideas, without much of a budget in mind. And that it is something I need to change a bit, but also I don't want to not, rent out a movie theater to show a really cool movie about a topic that, lots of Calgarians are talking about. I'd be like, oh, there's actually a movie already about this. I'm just going to rent out the plaza for $500 and we'll all watch it and we'll discuss it afterwards. Like, I don't want things like that to be budget driven necessarily. And I've been lucky having done this so long. I sort of know what'll work. But even recently, like, depending when this airs, so technically last night, but recently, I had a 10th anniversary party for my company, and tickets were $59, and there's a silent auction and things like that. And it's
great, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for coming.
Really lovely. We raised a pile of great people.
Yeah, I think I have an amazing network, and so I always love when I see them together and connecting. And at those events, I tend to just sit back and watch people, and that stuff makes me so happy. But hold
on, and you raised for
almost 7,000 for Center for Sexuality, which is great.
Good.
And it's a lot of connections and relationships, but
that's a good chunk of change. Well done.
Thank you so much. Thank you. But to have to charge tickets for that was weird for me, but like, I couldn't take on all those costs myself. And so the event coordinator I work with, she's like, oh, I thought way more people would come. And I was like, this is a very weird event. Like, this is an event that's celebrating me, and I'm charging people to come to it. I was like, the fact that
it that way.
Yeah, I was like, but the fact that 75 people came is incredible. I was like, I don't know if I've ever seen an event like this, but that doesn't, when I'm thinking of that stuff, that doesn't really occur to me. I sort of know what makes a good event, and how to pull it off, and what strings to pull, and who to ask favors from. And that's I think, sometimes, like you said, sometimes they make money, sometimes they lose money. Most of the time they help me pay my mortgage, which is great.
Yeah. Well, and I would think, from visiting your website, and looking at the things that you've accomplished, you've had some big, I'm not going to say who they are, but you've had some like pretty big companies paying you to spread a really nice message and talk candidly about stuff. And it's like, that's pretty awesome. And so I would think, hey, this guy's he's probably on his own private jet by now. And the reality is, hey, we're
that's
just
not true.
yeah, I know, but with the appearance it's so interesting. And then when I get to talk to you and see you live, it's like, no, it's just a normal dude. And and it's really, so I love that about you, right? So.
Like I'd like to make more money, but I'm the jobs that are like money motivated. Like I even worked for oil and gas here in Calgary for a little bit, and like it doesn't reverberate with me well. Like there's something about it where like I'd like to make more money where I'm comfortable, but very rarely do I make decisions based on money in terms of my company.
Yeah. Well, so how do you measure success? Like what is your, what do you because you said once in this podcast that you have, you alluded to that you'd achieve some level of success. So how are you measuring that? And what does that look like to you? How do you go, you know what, I'm good with what I got here?
It's funny. There's two things. So like, again, going back to short bald gay guy, so high school and stuff wasn't great. I don't have the horror stories that lots of people do, but it wasn't great. And so now being a person that people recognize on the street or are excited to do podcasts with, stuff like that sort of fills little 17-year-old Mike's bucket. Like things are going to be okay. Someday people are going to like you. You're good, stuff like that. But I think like, I remember last year when we did Social East, we had an opening reception for the speakers and stuff. And I went home and like cried, and I'm on a lot of antidepressants, so it takes a lot for me to cry. And I cried because I couldn't handle the positive feedback that the speakers were saying about what they get out of our events. Cause it does tend to be zeros and ones and connecting emails and stuff like that. And so then to see people, and I mean, you work with some of them, but some of our speakers go on to start their own businesses, to, start their own podcasts, to grow, to be super successful. Like the fact that maybe that starts with me, that to me feels like success.
Totally.
I like being that conduit, I think.
I couldn't agree with you more. Do you like my confusing branding? So I did this. This is for you. I know you're not a branding person, but you're a marketing person. So here's anybody who's listening to this and wants to check out a short bald gay guy who actually is a really good looking dude. He's on the YouTube channel, and then you can look at our branding confusion here. So this is old us, right?
Yeah.
And then
you got a sunflower.
This is new us.
And then you have an actual sunflower.
Well, kind of. It's a silk sunflower.
Your swag at events and stuff, or your business card should be one of those business cards that you can plant, like Christmas cards and that are sunflowers. I didn't
know that was a thing.
Yeah, well, there's like greeting cards that are like actual seeds, and so you read the card and you're like, oh great, and then you're supposed to plant it.
It's a great idea.
You should do it, but for sunflower seeds.
Okay. All right. I like that. Are you on the clock right now?
Yeah, exactly.
So back to your point, it's interesting because for me in growing Aiken Henderson, you knew us when we were very small. Like you started with us when it was just a couple of us, right? And now we're pushing 20 people if you include everybody. And for me coming into work and going, okay, we together, the big we, are putting food on like 20 people's tables, right? Like we're doing a thing here where we're creating and we're growing, sort of our message. And we get to do that with our clients at a level too. We've just gotten into the fractional CFO game with some construction companies, for example, and we're making some real, just as bookkeeping's bookkeeping, and bookkeeping is important, but it's not going to change the course of a business very often. Originally, I thought it would, and I was saying that publicly, and it didn't happen because it's bookkeeping is record keeping. The fractional CFO stuff and the visionary stuff is what's important. And we're working with these companies now with some high level resources, and they're actually, it's like, and the same thing, like tears, some of the success stories, but it's so hard, Mike. Like it's, the emotional stuff. I go to conferences, accounting tech conferences mostly, and listen to other firm owners talk about how great everything is. And it's like, you're not telling the whole truth. That's another thing I love about you is you kind of tell the whole truth through your podcast and how the essays go, by the way. And just here's the real thing. And it's emotional, man. Like this journey is really, there's a lot. Yeah. It's really hard. And like sometimes it's really easy and sometimes it's really hard. And I don't think I want to do anything else right now. Like I also know by now I tend to be a person
that once I've made up my mind about it, like I tend
Yeah.
to think about things, and once my mind is made up, then you can't really go back from it in my head. And I don't think about leaving this kind of world I'm in right now. I think about evolving it so I'm not involved in the minutia of events, and sort of hiring that out a bit more. But I want to be the person that is the access to the best information, and I want to find the best speakers who are growing, and make sure that they learn about asking for the right rates, and getting the opportunities
Yeah.
that they deserve, and things like that. So I definitely, it's, I don't want to sound sanctimonious, but definitely my moral compass runs a lot of my business.
Yeah.
And a lot of my decisions are based on that, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to just chat about, if I don't, I hopefully, Derek, feel free to edit this out if Mike cringes, but I want to talk about how you shifted your business on a dime very, very uncomfortably during the C word period, during the, you know, the before time, and we're in the after time now. I
Yeah.
always talked about, without actually naming you, because I wasn't sure if you'd be comfortable about it, as one of our success stories, and saying, you know, here's a person who figured, and not everybody had this option, by the way. Like, not everybody
Yeah.
had this option. You could go online and all that. But I just want to talk about, for a minute, about change and evolution, and how you were able to turn on a dime to make that happen, and what you did, like when everything, because
Yeah.
you host an in-person
Yeah.
conference, and
Yeah.
that's
Like
weird.
90% of my business was like wiped out in a day. And it was, it was so hard. And honest, it's, when I think about those first few days, they're really hard for me to think about, because it was, as
I
an
remember.
entrepreneur, you're used to making mistakes and being like, oh, I learned from that mistake, or that's my fault, I shouldn't have done that. But all of a sudden everything was gone and I did nothing wrong. And that
Yeah.
was that was so hard for me to process. But also, no one could help me. It felt like no one could help me, because everyone was going through it at the same time.
Yeah.
And I really pride myself on not asking for help, and not say, like, not coming off as like, buy my tickets please so I can keep
Yeah. Yeah.
going, like
Yeah.
that. Like, so I was like, I actually don't know what to do right now. um uh if a lot of money for an event was already spent in terms of marketing, um booking flights, all that stuff.
What
So
was
it
the
wasn't,
event? So give me the timeline. So
so,
everything
so
shut down in March.
March. So we
You
had
had
social,
money in the door. You paid a bunch of
yeah.
money. Yeah.
So we had Social Central in Ottawa planned. So we were about 3 weeks away from that, and we had about 250 people going. And then we had already sold about 500 tickets to Social West in June. And so our runway was super short. But like, I knew that it was an opportunity to become sort of an expert very quickly. And so while I didn't know what I was going to do with our tickets and refunds and stuff, I was like, as long as I show that I'm thinking about it, I think people are going to be okay. Because there's so many things going on. A $600 conference ticket is not a priority for lots of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially where most of our attendees are professional development. So, but for me, obviously, it's priority. So like, by March 20th, so like a week later, we were holding a webinar, like a crisis webinar on like
Oh,
what
we did that together.
yeah, yeah. Well, we did a couple things. So we did one instantly that was like what should your brand be saying right now? And like 800 people came.
Wow.
And then the next week we did something similar, and like another 800 came. And then we switched to and this was all while I was trying to figure out, because we still, even then it was like, oh, 2 weeks lockdown, we had no idea. So I was like, well, I don't want to
Yeah.
keep and so then April was we created this 4-week workshop where we had different speakers every day. And I basically said, like, look, these are, I think it was like, I'm going to make up a number. It was like $25 for 4 weeks. And if 100 of you buy tickets, I can pay our speakers. And if 200 of you buy tickets, I can give myself $2,000 that month. And we had like 400 or 500 people sign up. And so I think we really quickly became the go-to stop for, okay, everything we know about marketing has changed. Mike's the Canadian, and it was the Canadian perspective too, I think, that really helped. And that we found technology that was super easy to use, that wasn't cumbersome, that wasn't all that stuff. And so, and then when we finally decided like that we had to cancel everything, I wrote this email, and I honestly think I had like 4 or 5 crisis comms people read it, because it was the most perfectly worded email, because it had to convey like, yes, we'll give you a refund, please don't ask for a refund. Like, it was like this perfectly worded thing. And so what we offered them was full refund or 2 virtual conferences, and no one had done virtual conferences yet. And it was basically
Yeah.
like, if you've been to our events, you know this is not going to be a boring virtual conference. We will figure it out. We will make it cool. We'll make it fun. So our hope is that you do this, but of course we understand it's your money, it's the pandemic. And 80% of the people took the virtual conference. And so that saved us. Like that, all of a sudden we had money to put on these virtual conferences. And so then we ended up doing 5 of those. But what made ours unique was we sent everyone boxes.
Yeah, these bitchin' gift packs, man. They were
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. And then they were engaging with the customer, with the attendees. So we would, some speakers would put stuff in the boxes. So during the presentations, they'd be like, hey, look in your box and get this. Or some
Right.
sponsors, we did drag bingo with ATB. And so there was a bingo card and dabbers. And so what I liked about that, though, is that we were hiring the print shops lost all their business. So it's like, no, we found work for them, and we found work for the drag performers. And we were bringing all these people along for these journey. And for that first year, especially, all the companies, they still had their sponsorship dollars, they still had their marketing dollars, they just had nowhere to put them anymore. So that was sort of like our pitch, like, hey, we're doing stuff. And I remember our retention was sort of our biggest key to show success was retention.
Yeah.
And I think the first one was maybe 600 or 700 people, and it never dipped below like 95% retention for like a 6-hour conference. And
A new business is born.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, so
Yeah.
we've kept that to a degree. So I want to do it more. I just need to plan it more. Like, I don't think a virtual conference can't exist in this day and age. And what was really great about it was that it doesn't need to be as expensive as a real conference, but also it can reach people. You know, we had people from every territory,
Yeah.
every province coming to our virtual conferences. It's way more affordable for them to attend a virtual conference if you live in Nunavut than flying down, getting a hotel, stuff like that. And
Yeah.
so it was so fun for me as the person we were coordinating shipping the boxes, and just seeing where all these boxes were going, and and knowing that, to this day that, we made custom socks for each event, and that those socks are all over the place and stuff like that. That was I can look back on that time now and be like, that was really effing cool, and I can't wait to do stuff like that again.
That's such a neat, because I remember when we got to the end of it. And you're going, you were posting about, should we go back to in person? You were really agonizing about whether or not to rent an event space and start hosting in person again, because and this maybe is a good segue about this renaissance of human connection that I think is happening right now. I believe that. And you were fretting about, will people want to attend in person? And you were sort of polling and going, because this is going to be a big outlay to get the in-person thing going again, right?
Yeah, it was that was so hard. And and especially I during this time, I moved to the East Coast to be closer to my parents, and how the East Coast was dealing with the pandemic was completely different than Alberta, where our main event is. And so on the East Coast, there was no way we would be able to hold an event. The rules were still really strict, and people were really I don't know if scared is the right word, cautious. They were still very cautious, where Alberta was sort of, we're open for business, And so I was sort of like, are you actually, if I put an event on, are you going to come? I'm like, because I was like, I'm going to do things to make sure that it's as safe as it can be. And so we did some things, but we put it together in 7 weeks, which is insane for a conference. Never do that again. But I had to it was like, in 7 weeks or next year. And people were sort of moving on. People were sort of moving on for the virtual conferences a bit, our numbers were going down. So I was like, I'm in this flux again. How do I decide to come back? And we came back. I don't think we made a ton of money, but we established ourselves as we're back. And then that made us coming back next year easier. And even this year has been tickets went on sale 5 hours ago, and they're great already. So I'm glad that we came back, but it was really, really hard to gauge what people wanted. And I remember the biggest difference was how much people wanted to talk. So we had a major sponsor, a title sponsor, and they had done these really elaborate activations, these really, and if they're listening, it was a flop basically, because that's not what people wanted. People wanted to sit and talk. And so
human connection.
Yeah, and so this, because they hadn't talked to anyone, and so the second day we honestly scrapped the whole thing, and we turned it. The lobby was outdoor lobby that was covered, and we brought in food trucks, and we had a DJ, and we had cool places to sit, and people just like hung out, and like everyone knew it was the sponsor that put all that on, and that worked so much better.
So hold on, you did that overnight?
Yeah,
you did that change?
yeah.
Wow.
I have I don't know how to package it, but like I have a really good observation. Like I can tell when something's not working, and I'd rather fix it right away as much as we can. And
this
I mean, it's not just me.
Takeaway for the podcast: listen to your customers, right? So yeah.
I always say the customer's not always right, but the customer always decides. And so
customer's always a customer.
Yeah, I can do what I think they're going to do, but they inevitably decide what they want. And then it's not just me. Like we had an amazing event team, lots of colleagues helping us. But I've always had like I plant moles in each of our theaters. So like colleagues or friends, or if someone's like, I really want to come, but it's out of my price range because I just lost my job, I'm like, cool, come.
Go collect intel.
Yeah. And I was like, just tell me as the days are going on, like what people like, what they don't. Is the theater too cold? Is the screen not working? Like, I don't want to find out about that stuff in that post-conference survey. I want to be able to fix it right then, and respond to it and react to it. And I think in the 10 years I've been doing this, most people are fine with any speed bump as long as you acknowledge that there's a speed bump. So it's as simple as when you're at a restaurant and they're really busy. If the server comes and says, I'm very busy, I'm going to be about 5 minutes, but I'll be right back. You could be in half hour. I don't care. But if you don't talk to me at all in those first 5 minutes, then I start getting really anxious. And so acknowledging what the customers might have issues with, or like making a joke about it, say like, yeah, it's super hot in here, but blah, blah, well, like we brought in a bunch of water outside, or, really responding to it, I think has been a lot of our success, that people know that I'm genuinely interested in making sure that they have the best time possible.
Yeah. I mean,
and not just at the next event, right? Because they paid for that event. They don't want to hear that you fixed it at the next event. They want you to fix it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's why that's why you've got the largest conferences in Canada in this department. I think there's so many great takeaways in what you're saying, and I want to I kind of want to wrap with a few, some key thoughts that you have for new.
I thought you liked guitar. You're a rapper.
I do. Well,
you're rapping the interview.
I do enjoy rapping. Yeah. I've been checking out some old Snoop Dogg all summer. The old stuff from when I was a kid, and I'm going, this would not fly today. Like it would not fly today. No. And anyways, so please don't tell anybody I like Snoop Dogg. But anyways, I think that there's some key takeaways in there, which is be flexible. Like if we need to turn on a dime, we gotta have to turn on a dime. Your business depends on it, right? Problems are opportunities. I've always admired your ability to find opportunities in problems, right? You created a whole new business out of it. Like, congratulations, it's inspiring. And then the last one that I just heard is listen to your customers, and I think I certainly could do better at that. I'm sorry if I haven't been listening, but
I emailed you a few months ago and we figured it out. But it's hard. it's hard when you have to listen to your customers, but you also have staff and you have hundreds of clients, and that's a lot kind of thing. So like, I don't know everything that's going on in my conference, but I have people there who are watching each theater. Totally. And so like, it's knowing to sort of delegate and to, trust people and say, there has been times where like the event team I work with will say like, we should do this. And I have to be like, no, I think it's this. And like, they've come up and been like, oh, you were right. And then there's other times that I'm not right and they were right. Like but it's having a team around you where the goal is the same. And the goal for us is always that the attendees have an amazing time. I think a lot of events
context.
A lot of events. I think they think about the event up until the event starts. and then it's sort of on a roller coaster where I think like I'm still thinking about that event 2 weeks later, like all the little things, because one of my philosophies is like, I spend a ton on marketing, like, like at Facebook ads to get the word out and stuff like that. One way I can combat that is making it easier to come back next year. So if you have a great time, hopefully I don't have to spend a ton of money marketing
Oh yeah.
marketing you to come back, and you'll just come back.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's my hope is that my marketing budget, the longer we go on, the marketing budget gets smaller and smaller.
Per attendee.
For attendee. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'm super grateful for some of the connections in the marketing industry that you've helped me make. And it turns out there's speakers at your conferences. So if anybody listening is interested in you know, all things marketing, these conferences are a great idea. And the people who I actually work with present at your conferences. So
yeah, and they're not just for marketers, they're for people who need marketing. Like that's the big, and everyone needs marketing. Like like I was talking to a tech startup group last year, and they're like, oh, we're more tech startups. But I was like, okay, but what happens when those tech startups go into the real world? They have to know how to talk about it. They have to know what they should be spending money on. They need to know what the customers are going to like all that stuff, right? But they tend to just think about getting that funding and moving forward, and they forget about the marketing part. As you probably know, when budgets get tight, marketing is the first thing to get cut, and it's the stupidest thing to let go, because you're not going to get more customers without them hearing about you.
Absolutely. Okay, let's do a quick shotgun round here on give me your top tips for someone starting out a new business right now, because I know this is sort of a passion area for you. Like what are the things that you've learned through the I Quit podcast and doing your essays and all this? You know, what I'm about to start a business. What do I need to know?
Yeah, I mean, I think really, first of all, just start it, just do it. You can't plan. Rome wasn't built in a day. Your business, what you start your business on day one, your business is not going to be the same 365 days later. So you have to start to see if you even like it. I left basically to be like a writer and blogger, and like I liked it, but that's not my lot in life. I'm still trying to figure out my lot in life. But you can end up spinning your wheels forever, and you won't know until you start it. And you might not like it, but at least then you tried it, and then you can go back to a different kind of employment. And
Number one, get moving, stop analyzing. Love it.
Even with events, like when I get a lot of questions like, how do I do events? And I always say, like, book the venue, like the first thing you do, because then you have to do it. You've paid your deposit. And then I think too, sort of really rather quickly identifying your weaknesses. Like I ended up at your office door because like I wasn't doing my bookkeeping for like 5 years or something like that. And this was with the events were happening. So there's hundreds of thousands of dollars going into my bank account and out of my bank account every month. And I passed grade 12 math because my teacher felt bad for me. So like, why would I, that's very true. Why would I think that I can handle those numbers? When I talk to you, I'm always like, I have no idea what you're saying. Just do it. Like I have no idea. But and that's why it can Henderson so great. But it's sort of identifying your weaknesses and like, and now it's funny now that I'm 10 years into it, I'm really trying to focus on the things that bring me joy to my company. When you're an entrepreneur, there's lots that doesn't bring you joy. You get stuck doing stuff you really don't want to, but like, can I hire that out? Or is that idea dead? That thing I've been trying to get started for 4 or 5 years, it's not working. I have to move on, and sort of clear cutting my schedule and my goals a bit, and really focusing on the stuff that I really, really like. So definitely not taking on too much, and finding colleagues or finding, Derek and so many people, they've sort of built this like collective of people, which I've seen, where they sort of recommend people. And he had a really good LinkedIn post today that rubbing shoulders with like his competitors, like, but sometimes you're full, and so you're like, I'm full, use this person instead.
The pie is very, very big. We just sent a customer over to one of our competitors. So
great. What was the competitor's name? No, I'm just joking.
Okay, so tip number 2 is going to be you know what you're not good at, and don't focus on fixing it. Focus on the things you are good at and get rid of the rest.
Like I don't know, I'm 41 now, and like if I really cared about CRM systems, I would have learned how to do that by now. I don't care. I'm going to find someone else that cares passionately and can build it out for my company.
Yeah. Good tips. I appreciate it.
Hey,
I'm so grateful
thanks.
that you agreed to come on,
This
and
was great.
I learned a whole bunch about you today. So yeah,
Okay.
maybe we need to go for beer more or something. Yeah.
Please. I'd
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
that.
That'd
No,
be great.
you're always so great, and it's always great to chat with you. And I love all the things that you do for small businesses and entrepreneurs. So thanks for
Thanks,
giving
Mike.
me the opportunity.
Right on. All right. Mike Morrison, Bloggity Inc. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one.